Selected 1. Pause right here. Heaven has put everything on hold so that this moment could find you. It may feel like a coincidence that you're reading this, but it isn't. This is a heavenly interruption, a gentle hand pressing pause on the noise so your heart could hear what it's been waiting for. You're not like the others. Blending in was never your assignment. From the very beginning, your life has carried a signature that cannot be erased. You've always felt it, the quiet whisper inside you that says, I was meant for more. That murmur isn't a fantasy. It's the echo of the one who created you, calling you back to your true self. This is why heaven matched you too. This connection was never random. It was written before you were born, sealed in a scroll with your names spoken together. Every setback, every heartbreak, every hidden prayer you thought went unheard. All of it was preparing your hearts to recognize each other at the appointed time. You were chosen because your light carries something the world cannot own. Heaven placed a calling on your lives that will ripple outward, not only healing you both, but touching others through your story. Pause for a moment and picture it. 2 flames brought together in a dark room. Separate, they flicker. Together, they burn brighter than either could alone. That is why heaven matched you. That is why this moment is here. Your union isn't an accident. It's an assignment. And as you step into it fully, the weight of past pain will begin to make sense because it was shaping you for this. You carried each restless night in silence. None of the seasons in which you felt invisible were squandered. Like gold polished in the furnace, you have been ready. Please visualize this. A lone soldier in front of the monarch, standing at attention. Angels talk in the courts of heaven, yet the earth may see just another human. This one has an assignment mark. You have been selected, separated, and summoned to awaken. I once met a young guy who worked in silence for years while people around him sought attention. He often felt invisible and sometimes doubted his own value. However, he was being honed throughout his hidden season until doors unexpectedly opened, revealing that the waiting was not punishment, but rather placement. His tale is similar to yours. Denial is not what your delay is. It's a design. What's causing your heart to feel heavy? Because you were never intended to have a carefree life. Darkness is unsettled by the light you were meant to bear. Storms come at you because you pose a threat to the domain of evil, not because you are weak. Even when you are silent, your presence changes the mood. People react differently to you because of this. Life has thus required more of you than of others. Now, pay close attention. In front of you, a door has opened. This is more than just an inspirational moment. It has to do with change. You stand on the precipice between who heaven says you are and who you believe yourself to be. Everything changes if you take the initiative. Chapter 4, verse 13 of the book of Philippians contains this information. Because Christ gives me power, I am able to do everything. This serves as a reminder to not live small or let fear or failure hold you back. Instead, you should embrace the power that comes from being stronger than you could be on your own. You'll bear what seemed insurmountable with elegance. You will succeed because heaven is on your side. And I have a request for you. Don't keep it a secret if this word has sparked something within of you, or if heaven confirms that this is divine timing rather than chance. Spread this brightness. Share what you hear with others. To ensure that you never miss the anointing flow, please subscribe and like this message. Then write a message in the comments section below. I hear this. If you want to claim this message, you can show your support by paying a super thanks amount of up to $20 and typing 1111. I receive this. I am chosen. Use a simple number or prophetic symbol. The average listener should not read this. This is for those who have been marked. For those who have a torch when others hide. For those who will rise while others slumber. For you, heaven already knows what the earth is going to see. You are never typical. You have been selected. You can no longer ignore the fire within of you. In the same way that a seed disintegrates in the dark soil before emerging into the light. You have only grown because of your breaking season. You won't shrink back anymore. You won't doubt your own sufficiency anymore. Heaven's decision has already been finalized. You are unique and destined for more. Thus, go with bravery. Raise your head and confidently enter the new chapter that has been written for you. The world can still want to confine you to the labels of the past. However, heaven has a new name for you, and others will rise along with you. The awakening is not only for you. It is for all the souls you will come into contact with. You have concealed rejection like a shroud from others. In class, in friendships, and even in the private nooks of your own family, it was a burden, more than praise ever could. The pain of being misinterpreted molded you. Furthermore, rejection was really a covert affirmation, even though it felt like abandonment. You were being tagged for something distinct and apart. Picture clay in a potter's hands. The clay feels dizzy from being pushed, stretched, and spun in circles, but it has no idea why. The potter, however, sees the vessel it will develop into. In the same vein, God shaped every rejection, every door that was shut, and every "you don't belong here." You weren't being punished by him. He was making you stand out. You've learned to speak the language of rejection. You're familiar with the expression of unwelcoming eyes, the voices that make you seem less valuable. However, heaven has always whispered a different narrative, which they were unable to see. Long before their ideas were formed, you were selected. Their rejection merely served to highlight the fact that you do not get your identity from them. I recall learning about a young lady who didn't appear to belong anyplace. She felt excluded every time she sought to join communities, organizations, or even ministries. Years later, she realized that creating something fresh that had never been created before was her calling, not fitting in with any pre-existing group. Her painful rejection turned into evidence that she was destined to be a pioneer. In reality, what seemed like exile was assignment. If you want to claim this message, you can show your support by paying a super thanks amount of up to $20 and typing 1111. Consider Joseph, who was sold by his brothers. Everywhere he went, he was misinterpreted and cast into jails and pits. However, every rejection brought him one step closer to the kingdom that was waiting for him. He would never have gone without being betrayed if he had been loved at home. Egypt would not have existed. Famine-stricken countries would not have been saved if it weren't for Egypt. The narrative doesn't stop when the selected are rejected. It is the turning back toward fate. Why me? Why do I always feel like the outsider? But do you see the truth now? Being an outsider is your divine positioning. You are not meant to echo the voices of the crowd. You are meant to carry a sound that the world has not yet heard. The separation has always been your protection. According to the book of Psalms, chapter 1, verse 22, the stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. This is your tale. You weren't accidentally missed. You were intentionally turned down. Additionally, you will bear weight that others cannot, just as the foundation influences the overall strength of the building. Heaven was preparing you to be fundamental, and that is shown by the same circumstances that cause you to doubt your value. Think about this. In a brightly lit room, a torch does not shine. However, its glow becomes obvious around midnight. You were created to shine when others would not. Rejection followed you because of this. Heaven used it to prevent you from being too cozy in areas where your fire would have been concealed. Resilience has been chiseled out of you by rejection. It has shattered your illusions and made you rely only on God to define who you are. You've learned to walk in solitude, while others may rely on applause. When permission is revoked, others can crumble. But you've learned that since God gave you your value, man cannot take it away. Thus, your secret instructor has been the rejection you feared. It taught you that God is always present, regardless of who departs. It demonstrated to you that heaven still opens even when doors shut. It demonstrated that being shunned by guys is often what drives you to accept your fate. Were your rejection as a badge of pride? Chosen one. If you want to claim this message, you can show your support by paying a super thanks amount of up to $20 and typing 1111. Don't hate it. Heaven was writing yes for each time you were told no. Heaven was forming a table with your name on it for each circle that was unable to accommodate you. And the same voices that rejected you will be amazed by what God has accomplished on the foundation they once disapproved of when your time to rise comes. Selected one. The person who has the keys to every door defines your tale, not who closed it. Heaven's will cannot be overruled by man's refusal. You came closer to your actual path because of the hands that unintentionally pushed you away. So raise your gaze. The pain of being rejected will pass. However, the fortitude it instills in you will eventually drive you to look back and give thanks to God for each closed circle, as you would never have found your crown without them. You may recall evenings when the sound of quiet was more deafening than any storm. You awoke, gazing into the darkness and asking queries that no one could respond to. Your face was wet with tears, but since you believed that no one was interested, you kept them hidden from the public. Heaven, however, was paying attention. All the silent cries were collected. Each sigh was recorded. Those quiet evenings weren't in vain. They were eternally engraved prayers. You may be persuaded that you are forgotten by loneliness. In actuality, however, heaven is more concerned with fights that are concealed. You were battling in private, while others were celebrating in public. You were whispering through anguish while others proclaimed their successes. And God witnessed everything. Your calling was shown by the hidden weight you carried. Your fate was irrigated by the tears you believed vanished into pillows. Imagine Hannah, unborn and misunderstood. She cried at the temple year after year as others made fun of her. But during those nights of secret suffering, her fate as a prophet's mother was being written. Suffering gave rise to her prayer, and her prayer gave birth to Samuel, the man who would establish kingdoms. Similarly, you may not be aware of the burden your restless nights are bearing. They're the soil in which greatness is born. I remember a guy who worked diligently during the day and battled uncertainty at night. He believed that no one was aware of his sacrifices. However, God spoke to him via a passage he had never previously paid attention to on the night he almost gave up. Abruptly, the quiet was broken by confidence. He entered a ministry that impacted thousands of people as a result of that pivotal moment. The darkest nights are often the birthplace of the brightest dawns. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Jeremiah. Chapter 31 is a reminder of this from his tale. Verse 16, "Keep your eyes from crying and your voice from crying, because the Lord says that your labor will be repaid." Heaven's answer to your mute pleas is this: we have taken note of your suffering. Your invisible sacrifices, your silent perseverance, and your unspoken dedication will all be repaid. You won't walk away empty-handed after bearing such weights with trust. Your personal problems weren't always the cause of your restless nights. Intercession was what they were. Without realizing it, you bore the responsibilities of others. Because you were strong enough to support it until a breakthrough came, heaven trusted you with weight. You were standing in the gap for wars that no one else could see, which is why you often felt exhausted. Imagine yourself in a quiet environment, like a candle burning. No spotlight, no outlaws, just solitude and perseverance. But the darkness's hold was broken by that single spark. You have been that way. Silent, steady, invisible, yet essential. It's time to respond immediately. Put this brief statement in the comments. Light is my choice. Why? Because you link yourself with the reality that your quiet evenings are not wasted nights when you put those thoughts into paper. You transform private tears into a public statement by typing it. You proclaim to the invisible world and to yourself that the darkness has not prevailed. Don't undervalue this deed. Words are powerful. Desperation is broken when you say, "I choose light." Instead, you choose hope. You are into the prophecy that your tears will last through the night. However, happiness arrives in the morning. This goes beyond simple involvement. It is change. Your quiet evenings serve as lessons. You learned perseverance from them. They made you more sensitive to the voice of God, and they instilled in you empathy for those who suffer in silence. Because those nights molded the core of your being, you'll never hate them. Selected one, pay close attention to this. Heaven saw your weeping, but the earth did not. And for each seed planted in secret, heaven has already prepared the harvest. You are not defined by what shattered you. You won't be crushed by what you carried. It will crown you instead. Your tale is one of holy exchange rather than unending grief. God used every quiet night as an altar to gather your tears and transform them into oil for your future. The weight you experienced was a mantle being put on your shoulders, not an indication of weakness. Those evenings weren't in vain. Heaven will double those investments. Know this. The one who sees in private notices nothing that is suffered in secret. For seasons of fruitfulness, your invisible difficulties have been keeping you anchored, much as a tree's roots grow deeper in the dark before its branches reach the sky. In reality, what seemed to be a delay was God fortifying your foundation, ensuring that you would never collapse when you rise. You often underestimate the weight of your presence. Have you ever noticed how rooms change as soon as you enter them? Conversations might be silent at times. People may become uncomfortable at times. And animosity may sometimes flare up out of the blue. It has nothing to do with your natural self. It is a result of your spiritual beliefs. The gloom was disturbed by your brightness, and the mark on you has always been recognized by the adversary. You have been different from the beginning, even before you really realized it yourself. Darkness saw your potential and moved quickly to quiet you, which is why certain assaults fell against you while you were so young. However, each strike intended to harm you has just made you more aware of yourself. Like flames concealed in ash, your fire has never been extinguished. It waits for God's breath to rekindle its spark. Consider Jesus' entry into the synagogue, his reading of the scroll of Isaiah, and his declaration that the Lord's Spirit was upon him. His remarks, as well as the authority that accompanied them, astounded all who listened. It's the same with you. People could react passionately to you, either in rejection or appreciation, and they might not know why. They feel the anointing you bring, however. If you want to claim this message, you can show your support by paying a super thanks amount of up to $20 and typing 1111. A young guy I ever met was often uncomfortable in social situations. Perhaps there was something wrong with him, he thought, since he was uncomfortable. Later on, however, he understood that it wasn't awkwardness. It was the spiritual conflict between his inner light and the surrounding darkness. Others' secret things were awakened by his presence. He had an authority they couldn't understand, not because he was trying. This was the reality of his life. It is impossible to avoid exposing what is untrue when you are carrying heaven's fire. In chapter 4, verse 6 of his epistle to the Corinthians, the apostle reminds us, God, who said, "Let light shine out of darkness," made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ. This light inside you is not dull, little, or fragile. It is the same light that pierced the first chaos of creation. The darkness trembles because it recognizes it. Your own radiance is not with you. The stamp of God's splendor is on you. Think about this. A lighthouse never says it's sorry for illuminating. Its sole mission is to penetrate the darkness, to warn, to direct, and to protect, even if its light disturbs the tranquility of the night. That lighthouse is you. People's resistance to you and their withdrawal from you are often signs that your light is working. By just being there, you make visible what others would like not be seen. Yes, it might seem lonely at times. It is expensive to carry light. You can want for approval only to find that your soul does not mesh well with compromise-heavy surroundings. But don't worry. Rejection is not what your separation is. It's an assignment. What exposes darkness cannot be celebrated, and what condemns it cannot be welcomed by compromise. You may remember instances when people shunned you for no apparent reason. Their smiles diminished. They spoke carefully, or they choose to keep their distance. You weren't at fault. Their spirits were reacting to yours. Demons are restless because of the oil you carry. Pursuing purity causes conviction in hearts that aren't prepared for it. This is the unspoken consequence of being selected. Imagine a sword being drawn from its sheath. It shines, cute and undeniable. It is impossible to ignore, whether they follow it or dread it. Your brightness is similar to that. You can't be concealed. Despite your best efforts, your absence is sensed and your silence talks. You've been identified as a dark disruption. Please don't hate this. Don't wish it away. The same thing that makes some people turn away from you is also what will attract others to you. People are longing for a voice, a presence, and a life that defies the darkness. And they will see hope when they come across you, because your light shows that there is another way. It won't always be an easy road. You will experience the conflict between light and dark throughout the seasons. But keep in mind that you're not battling from a position of weakness. You are in a position of authority. You possess the same spirit that brought Christ back to life. You're difficult to mute and difficult to shake. Select one, then allow your light to disturb what needs to be disturbed. Allow it to awaken, convict, and penetrate. You are not made to provide consolation to the world. You are made to be seen by everyone. You have experienced the price of being selected. This responsibility has never been easy to carry. You have been asked to tread the narrow path while others choose the easy one. On other days, you feel like you could crack under the weight. You're still standing, however, somehow. You are not the source of such power. You are expected to suffer, which is why grace is offered. Think about the picture of a runner running a lengthy relay with a torch. Most people never witness the lonely sections of the road, the sore muscles, or the times when the flame almost burned out, even if the throng may shout at the finish line. That runner is you. Others were unable to carry the brightness you did. Many choose not to bear the cross that you have. And it has been holy, even if it has been heavy. There are days when you question why others appear to have it easier than you do. They chuckle superficially. They are unrestrained in their pursuit of pleasure. You may be wondering why my pathway requires so much. The reality is straightforward. Because you have been selected. Your perceived discipline is not a kind of punishment. It's getting ready. You are supposed to confront what others run away from, what other people stay away from. You have been called to carry. Consider Moses, bound for the woods despite having grown up in the court of the Pharaoh. Heaven had designated him for more. Therefore, he was unable to settle where others had settled. Or consider Esther, who wore the burden of a country while living in luxury. Being selected means carrying a weight that the outside world cannot comprehend. Chapter 19, verse 5 of the book of Exodus describes the thundering voice of God. Therefore, you will be my most prized asset out of all the countries if you completely follow me and uphold my agreement. Both the promise of inheritance and the price of obedience are genuine. You are dressed in favor, even if you may feel deprived of luxuries. Even when you're surrounded by covenant, you may feel pressured by hardships. I recall a young lady who abandoned a comfortable route to pursue her spirit's yearning. Her friends believed she was stupid. Her family believed she was squandering her life. But she discovered an inexplicable delight in her sacrifice. Although she was carrying more weight, she was receiving more. Her tale is similar to yours. Those who are chosen are called to crowns, not to comfort. And let me take a moment to be honest. I want to encourage you rather than order you to sow back into this. Well, if the words you are hearing uplift your soul and nourish your spirit, just like rivers need to be refilled by rain, consider it as caring for a tree whose fruit you have consumed. The generosity of people who believe in it keeps this river going. Click subscribe to follow this stream. To ensure that the live water you drink continues to flow to those who are thirsty, tap, like, and share. Additionally, if your heart is moved, you may contribute as a seed sown in fruitful land rather than as a duty. No seed is ever lost. It develops into a tree that benefits many people with its shade. Innumerable people's darkest moments are kept bright by your gift, which turns into oil poured into the lamp. And be aware of this if you're unable to give at this time. Your prayers, sharing, and listening are also fuel for this fire. You may stay connected to this encouraging stream by subscribing. The light spreads beyond you when you like and share, touching souls you would never encounter. No matter how big or little, every action counts. Being selected carries a lot of weight. However, it becomes tolerable when we suffer it together. On this journey, you're not by yourself. Everywhere in the globe, there are people just like you who are holding their torch. And the night cannot stay black once our fires come together. So keep moving ahead bravely. Accept the expense as evidence of your superiority. You've been selected. It's not because the path is simple, but rather because you have the fortitude to persevere. As you walk, Remember that heaven is pleased with your sacrifice and assures you that nothing you give up for God will ever be lost. You will learn that every tear shed, every consolation given up, and every solitary step taken contributed to the creation of an enduring kingdom heritage. Your return is even bigger than your expense, and you'll be able to clearly understand that all of your sacrifices were worthwhile on that day. You were raised by every hardship. You gained power from each capitulation, and the path of the one who was genuinely selected was marked by each step. There have been times when you've wanted to go back. You pondered if it would be simpler to drop the call and blend in with the throng since the burden of your travel was so great. But you've never been able to give up because of something inside of you. You are not the source of that internal opposition. The hand of heaven is keeping you from being destroyed. But pay close attention to this. Being selected does not provide you the ability to live a carefree life. There are times when compassion warns and others when it whispers. One of those crucial thresholds is where you are. These days, every choice you make affects generations to come as well as your own tomorrow. You risk losing your soul if you take one more step toward revolt. Consider Lot's wife, who turned back toward the city of fire, even though obedience might ignite your destiny with only one step. In a single instant, her heart was still tied even if her body was saved. She lost everything because of her backward gaze. The same caution still applies today. Don't go back. The voices of compromise, the comforts of your past, the blindness that results from habits that alter you is not worth it. There was a guy I knew who became tired of walking in order. He was envious of others who appeared to thrive on shortcuts and lived freely. He made a single, seemingly innocuous compromise one day, but it led to a door that almost destroyed his calling. His restoration came only when he repented deeply, but there were still scars. For many, his narrative serves as a mirror. Eternity may reverberate from what seems little today. Through the prophet Hosea, the Spirit communicated. Verse 9 of chapter 14. The Lord's methods are correct. They are worn by the virtuous. However, the disobedient falter in them. The route in front of you isn't a walk in the park. It is a hallowed space. Walking in it necessitates making the choice to comply despite your body's resistance and the world's temptations. The selected cannot dwell in division. The shackles and the flames cannot be held simultaneously. Consider yourself perched on a precipice. The valley of ingrained routines, well-known oases, and fleeting joys is behind you. Even if it seems unclear and demands confidence, there is a bridge of light that leads to destiny before you. To go back is to become a shadow. To take a step forward is to find strength you were unaware you had. You are presently standing here. Don't let fatigue fool you. Darkness wants you to think that obedience comes at too great a cost. But disobedience is the real price. Reversing course would mean giving up the inheritance that bears your name. Even when it seems shaky, taking a stand means holding on to promises that generations have hoped for. Do you recall Israel's desert experience? Some people believe that independence was too demanding and wish they could go back to Egypt, where they were shackled. But you are on the same threshold as those who persevered, who didn't give up, and who entered a country full of milk and honey. Don't allow transient hunger to deprive you of long-term prosperity. Imagine a ship at sea being buffeted by waves. Even if it is dangerous, the temptation is to get back to the closest port. However, the captain who keeps on, led by the stars, arrives to the beach that was promised from the start. That captain is you. The storms are genuine. However, the destination is also. Selected one. This is no accident. It is a heavenly interruption meant to fortify and caution you. Rebellion is not something you can afford to take lightly. Every action counts. Every decision has consequences. It's not fear. It's love-spoken truth. Because what you cannot see, heaven sees. I now want you to do a prophetic act to commemorate this occasion. Put the words 444 in the comment section. It's more than simply a figure. It is a statement that you value consistency, grounding, and compliance above giving in. You're suggesting I won't go back when you write it. I choose to remain firmly planted. superstition is not what this is. It's alignment. In the Bible, numbers often had prophetic significance. Declaring quattroentos quarni quattro means that you are deciding to be like the unwavering, unmovable cornerstone. You are attesting that you are a member of the home on the rock, not the valley of shadows. Thus, use this warning your advantage. Allow the idea of being blind to make you want to hold on to the light even more. Allow your fear of going back to be your strength to go ahead, because you have been selected for destiny rather than disaster. And history will remember you as someone who strode confidently over the threshold and seized the inheritance prepared before the world's foundations, rather than as someone who faltered at the brink of promise. Being a believer is not a hardship. It's a present. A lot of people think it's disgrace. Shame, however, drives you away from God. Conviction, however, draws you in. Heaven's way of stating that you are too important to lose is conviction. When you sense that light burden in your soul, it's not kind of discipline. It serves as defense. Imagine a shepherd keeping an eye on his flock. Though it may seem severe, the stroke of the rod in his hand is not intended to cause wounds. Its purpose is to steer, correct, and keep the sheep from getting into a wolf's path. Similarly, the conviction of the Spirit is the rod that protects you even when it hurts. Without it, you would float into invisible perils. Conviction, according to one young guy, is like an invisible leash. Every time he went too far, he could feel it dragging him away from routes his companions were free to go. He disliked it sometimes. However, his heart was filled with thankfulness years later when he looked back and realized where those buddies had ended up. In reality, what seemed like limiting was preservation. This is your tale. 2. You're unable to refrain from making careless decisions, even when many around you may. You are burned by the same behavior that seems innocuous to others. This is not for you, and you can feel the pull, the whisper, the unease. Unrest is not a sign of weakness. It is proof of selection. In his epistle to the Romans, the Apostle Paul said in verse 14 that the children of God are those who follow the Spirit of God. Sonship is proven by Lee's belief. It serves as a reminder from heaven that you are not a part of this world. The ghost wouldn't follow you about so assiduously if you were normal. Your life matters to the kingdom, which is why you feel the weight of conviction. Picture yourself strolling in a woodland at sunset. There are safe routes. Others lead to cliffs that are obscured by dark shadows, putting the wanderer in danger of catastrophe. That glow is conviction. It illuminates hazards you were unaware of when it flashes across your path. Even though you may feel behind schedule, you're not doomed. You avoid the fall thanks to the warning. Conviction is unpleasant. Let's face it. It disturbs your plans, makes you feel uneasy, and demands an answer. However, the language of change is pain. Before its wings open, the butterfly has to push through the constriction of the cocoon. Before destiny is revealed, the selected must overcome the weight of belief. Think about King David after his failure. He felt conviction stab him like a spear. His answer to conscience brought him back from that point of brokenness. Instead of hardening his heart, he screamed, "Create in me a clean heart, O God." He gained notoriety for his fall, but more for his devotion to God. Conviction is not the end, as this demonstrates. It is the gateway to rejuvenation. Conviction is like fire. What cannot stay is burned away. However, it doesn't eat pure things. Gold withstands a fire and becomes even more brilliant. The same is true for you. You could lose relationships, habits, or desires that would have destroyed you because of your conviction. However, what's left is more powerful, pure, and brighter. Sometimes you may be inclined to dispute with your conviction, to drown it in distraction, or to suppress it, to use loudness to numb it. But take note, if you silence your conviction, you're also silencing the voice that will protect your future. To live is to pay attention and comply. Opposition is a danger of blindness. It's not a flaw that you are sensitive to conviction. You are strong at it. It indicates that your heart is living. It indicates that the Spirit has not abandoned you to fend for yourself. Many people are oblivious to danger, deaf to the truth, and lack conviction. However, since you are too dearly loved to be left behind, you, the chosen one, feel the weight of heaven's grasp. Swasi belief. Accept it as a father's hand that won't let go of his kid, even if it makes you uneasy. React fast when conviction stirs. Don't wait. Intimacy is increased with each answer. Your steps become stronger with each obedience. You will learn to see conviction as wings rather than bars, because each time you give into it, you escape traps that might have otherwise held you back. Conviction is always accompanied with denial. With each sacrifice, you go one step closer to the freedom you want. You should not hate conviction. Treasure it because it is evidence that heaven is still calling your name, fighting for you, and believing in you. Mercy has to give way at some time. Few people like to confront this grim reality, but it must be spoken. Mercy is patient, quick, and profound. However, it is not a limitless luxury. Mercy gives repentance more time. However, it withdraws when its hand is consistently rejected. Additionally, the heart hardens as mercy retreats. The eyes lose their brightness and the ears become deaf. Consider the Pharaoh of Egypt. He was repeatedly offered chances to become softer and let go of what God required. Not every plague was only judgment. It was mercy too. One more opportunity to turn. His heart, however, became tougher with each rejection until justice triumphed over kindness. This is what happens when you ignore the call for too long. Silence replaces what previously sparked conviction. Yet the most terrible judgment of all is silence. I recall talking to a guy who used to cry readily when he prayed. Over time, he disregarded the nudges, rationalized the concessions, and silenced the voice that formerly guided him. His heart was sensitive and quick to react when the Spirit spoke. He confessed one day, sorrowfully, that he no longer felt anything. What had taken place? They had repeatedly promised mercy. However, after being turned down time and time again, it moved aside, leaving him to his own will. The old words found in verse 15 of chapter 3 of the Epistle to the Hebrews are still relevant today. Today, don't harden your hearts if you hear his voice. Mercy, is a modern gift. This is your chance to reply before tomorrow ends it. Assuming that the window will always be open while the Spirit convicts is dangerous. Delays are bad because they create barriers and walls quickly turn into prisons. Imagine a candle that is burning at night. Though it flickers, the flame still emits light. It's like putting a glass over the fire every time you refuse to listen. Eventually, the light goes out as the oxygen becomes thinner. There is no light in the room. The candle was covered, not because it was feeble. With kindness, it is the same. It doesn't just go. Slowly, it is turned off until nothing is heard. This must be understood by the selected. You have experienced conviction. Because kindness stood between you and disaster, you were spared despite having heard the warnings. However, if kindness is disregarded, what was previously protected is revealed. This isn't done only to make people afraid. Its purpose is to arouse urgency. Consider the tale of King Saul, who was once anointed, selected, and full of promise. However, he became insensitive to criticism and hardened his heart. The throne he previously occupied went to another. Mercy moved aside, and the Spirit left him. What a catastrophe! It was because kindness had run its course, not because God had failed. The heart's threshold is an invisible line. It exists, but no one is certain when it is crossed. We get closer to compassion every time we reject it. We return to safety each time we comply. That is the reason for the Spirit's fervent request. While the door is open, reply. Why is this important to me, you ask? I'm still drawn to God. And the precise evidence that kindness is still at work in your life is that selected one. Ignoring conviction is more dangerous than really experiencing it. Heaven has not given you up if you can still hear, feel, quiver, and express gratitude. It indicates that compassion is still in place and begs for your answer. Imagine a seashore being washed by waves. A bit more rock is eroded by each wave. One day, if the rock doesn't give in, the waves will stop, leaving it unharmed but dead. However, if the rock fractures, water seeps into the crevices and gives life. You're not supposed to be uncompromising. You are urged to become softer, more vulnerable, and more receptive. Your heart should be moved with respect by this reality. Mercy is not a sign of weakness. God's power is delaying judgment so that you have more time. It won't wait all the time, however. Avoid taking a chance with heaven's patience. To do this is to put everything at danger one by one. Let these words become deeply ingrained. Pain, rejection, or failure are not the worst losses. It is the moment when God's voice becomes quiet and compassion withdraws. Answer as long as you can hear. Give in as long as you can sense it, because no soul can bear the weight of heaven's stillness. Thus, cherish the gift you still possess. Embrace your belief. Honor the cry of compassion and embrace the whispers. Because every answer you give now determines the path you will take tomorrow and guarantees that the fire within of you never goes out. A crown is waiting for you, not one that was made by people, one that is formed in the furnace of obedience and perseverance rather than one that deteriorates with time. That crown has been shaped by every hardship you have faced. The splendor that will one day rest upon your head has been woven by every rejection, tear, and silent moment of fortitude. Crowns are not awarded lightly. They are only available to race finishers who don't give up when it would have been simpler. You could have made a mistake. Sometimes you may have crawled. You haven't given up on the course, however, and it is seen by heaven. Consider Paul as he neared the conclusion of his life after a great deal of persecution, incarceration, and adversity. With assurance, he stated that a crown of righteousness had been prepared for him. He had trust in the constancy of the one who had called him, not in himself. Even while the specifics of each path are different, the promise remains the same. You too shall inherit the crown if you persevere. I remember a lady who suffered years of invisible toil. Despite the fact that her efforts were hardly recognized, she served with loyalty, showed concern for others, and fought resentment. When her moment of fame eventually came, she was more concerned with the silent confidence in her heart than with the cheers. Heaven has always seen me. She had no title until long before that confidence became her crown. In the book of Revelation, the Lord's message is revealed. Verse 10 of chapter 2, I will grant you life as your victor's crown if you remain loyal to the end. This isn't a metaphor for another individual. That's your reality. Your crown is being crafted because of the exact hardships that almost shattered you. The weight of glory is being traded in for the weight of your misery. Imagine a jeweler working on a crown. Each time the hammer struck, each and every chisel cut, it gets closer to becoming beautiful with each refining fire. Crafting is what feels like breaking. Hidden gain is what seems to be loss. There will be no delay in your crown. They're perfecting it. This situation is mysterious. During periods of darkness, crowns are often formed. When you get no applause, when your perseverance goes unnoticed, and the diamonds are added when you fight the urge to give up. Heaven respects what the world ignores. And now an act of prophecy. Put this brief statement in the comments section. I'll be done. There is more to these 3 words than just a sentence. They serve as an anchor. You are publicly promising your soul and testifying before God that you will not desert your race by typing them. Why is this important? Because fate is shaped by words. The falsehood that you're too weak, too exhausted, or too shattered to go on is silenced when you declare that you will finish. It substitutes resolve for hopelessness. You go from surviving to overcoming as a result. And you'll look back on this proclamation as a turning point in your journey when you eventually get your crown. Your narrative won't finish in defeat, chosen one. The seemingly never-ending difficulties are only chapters, not conclusions. The immortal and uncorruptible crown of life is already waiting for you. You also pick endurance each day. You mutter, yes, to obedience every day. It's almost time for you to wear it. You weren't asked to resign. You weren't designated as a failure. You were selected for victory. Awaiting you is your crown. The crown that has been created for you represents both identification and triumph. It proclaims that you are the king's property, that your life was not in vain, and that every sacrifice that was concealed was witnessed. Crowns are more than simply decorations. When you wear yours, They become testimony. It will have a louder voice than any words could. It will recount a tale of perseverance, faith, and tearful nights followed by strong mornings. Know this very well. The adversary attempted to persuade you that your suffering was in vain, that your patience was futile, and that your loyalty went unappreciated. The reality, however, is the reverse. The cup of remembering has been filled with every tear. Your crown has gained weight with each try. There has been no denial of the delays. They've been getting ready. Glory is being fitted into you. So raise your head. Imagine the day when you are called by name and given the crown by the head shepherd, even in the middle of combat. On that day, the prize will be greater than the hardships. Thus, none of them will matter. Your efforts are not in vain. Your perseverance is not in vain. You are the rightful owner of the genuine crown. The conflicts you have encountered have never been arbitrary. It was no coincidence that storms erupted against you. They were intended to see whether your faith could bear the burden of your vocation. But here you are, maybe damaged but unbreakable. We need to communicate clearly. There have been attempts to create weapons against you, but they failed. They were able to strike, but not destroy. Despite their muttered falsehoods, the truth won out. You are a real example of how God's promise can withstand any assault. The prophet Isaiah once declared in chapter 54, verse 17, "No weapon forged against you will prevail. You will refute every accusing tongue." This is the heritage of the Lord's servants. Your survival is not by chance. It is inheritance. You carry a legacy of protection that cannot be broken. Even when enemies thought they had you cornered, angels surrounded you like invisible warriors. Even when words cut deep, the voice of God rose louder inside you. You're not simply surviving. You are overcoming. Imagine a tree in the middle of a storm. Winds bend its branches. Rains flood its roots. Yet the tree remains. Why? Because its roots go deep. That is you. The storms have proven not your weakness, but your foundation. Each battle has driven your roots deeper into God's strength. Now, even greater winds will not topple you. I once knew a man who felt as though every season of his life was war. He thought he must have done something wrong to face such opposition. But over time, he discovered that opposition is confirmation. The greater the calling, the fiercer the resistance. His battles did not mean abandonment. They meant his assignment carried weight. And so do yours. Now let me speak with honesty and tenderness. If these words have been a shelter for you, if they have given you strength in the midst of storms, I invite you to take part in sustaining this flow. Think of it as a fire in the wilderness. You come, you warm yourself, and you find courage to go on. But fires do not burn without fuel. They must be tended. When you like and share this message, you are placing logs on the fire, ensuring that others wandering in cold nights can find warmth. When you subscribe, you choose to return to this fire again and again, knowing it will not go out. And if your heart feels led to donate, think of it as pouring oil into a lamp. It is not forced, not demanded, but it is your voluntary act of keeping the light shining for others. When you like and share, it is as if you release doves into the sky, each one carrying hope to someone far away, who may never hear your voice, but will feel your impact. When you subscribe, you are planting a vineyard. It will not bear fruit in one day, but over time, it becomes a place of abundance where you can return again and again to be nourished. And if your heart feels moved to donate, think of it as laying stones into a bridge. Every stone matters, and together they form a path that others in despair can safely walk across. There is no obligation here. Grace cannot be purchased. Truth cannot be bought. This is not about requirement. It is about invitation. If the Spirit stirs you, then give. If not, know that your presence, your prayers, and your willingness to share are also part of tending this flame. Consider a river. Each drop of water seems small, but together they create a stream strong enough to carve valleys and sustain life. In the same way, each actor like your share, your subscription, your gift becomes a drop that keeps this river flowing. And as it flows, it nourishes countless souls who thirst for hope. Your battles have taught you one thing. You cannot fight alone. You needed the unseen hand of God, and you needed voices to remind you that you were not abandoned. In the same way, someone else right now is in the middle of their storm, searching desperately for a word. You could be part of the answer. Every battle you have overcome is now a testimony. Every storm you have survived is evidence. And every act of support you give is a torch lit for the next traveler in the dark. This is the beauty of being chosen. Your fight is never just for yourself, but for others who will follow. So walk boldly. Chosen one, do not fear the weapons, for they will not prosper. Do not tremble at the storms, for they only prove your roots. You are more than a survivor. You are a warrior crowned with victory. And every step you take forward declares that no battle was wasted, no tear unseen, nor fight in vain. The wilderness is not a place of punishment. It is a place of preparation. You know this truth, even if you have not always recognized it. The seasons when you felt most isolated, when it seemed as though heaven itself had gone silent, were not wasted. They were training grounds carefully designed to forge strength that comfort could never give. Think of Israel wandering 40 years in the desert to the natural eye. It seemed cruel, a never-ending delay. But in truth, it was the furnace where faith was tested, where dependence on God was built, and where a generation was shaped into warriors. The wilderness stripped them of Egypt's influence and taught them to trust manna from heaven, water from the rock, and fire by night. Without the wilderness, they could never have inherited the promise. Your wilderness has done the same. It pulled away false supports. It removed the voices you leaned on too heavily. It exposed the idols you did not realize you carried. And in that painful silence, your spirit learned to hear the still, small whisper of God. I once knew a woman who described her wilderness season as living in a desert of unanswered prayers. She said the silence nearly broke her. But in time, she discovered that silence was not absence. It was instruction. In the wilderness, she found a strength she did not know she had, and a clarity she could not find in noise. Her desert became her doorway into destiny. The writings of Deuteronomy chapter 8 verse 2 remind us, remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands. Learn this is why your wilderness matters. It humbles you. It tests you. It reveals what lies beneath the surface. And though the process is painful, the outcome is priceless. The wilderness transforms wanderers into warriors. Imagine a blacksmith's forge. Iron is placed in a fire, beaten, cooled, then heated again, over and over. The process repeats until the iron is no longer brittle, but strong, sharp, and ready for battle. That is what your wilderness has been. Each wave of heat, each strike of the hammer, each cooling silence has been shaping you into a weapon heaven can trust. Do not despise this season. Many run from it, desperate to escape discomfort. But you have endured, and in your endurance you have gained treasures others cannot see. You have gained resilience. You have gained discernment. You have gained intimacy with God that only those who walk through barren places can understand. Consider Elijah hidden by the brook Cherith. For a time rounds fill him, and the brook sustained him. It was not glamorous, but it was holy in the hiddenness. Elijah was prepared for the fire on Mount Carmel. Without the brook, there would have been no bold confrontation with the prophets of Baal. In the same way, your wilderness has not diminished you. It has preserved and prepared you. There are days you may have felt forgotten, but look closely. Who kept you in your weakest hours? Who provided manna when you had nothing left? Who whispered hope when despair tried to suffocate you? The wilderness has proven again and again that you are not abandoned. You are sustained. Picture a seed buried beneath soil. To anyone watching, it looks like death. Buried, hidden, forgotten. But beneath the ground, roots are spreading. Life is stirring. Strength is forming. In time, the seed breaks through the surface. Stronger because of what was cultivated in the dark. That is your story. What felt like burial was actually planting. What looked like silence was preparation for growth. One day you will look back on your wilderness not with bitterness, but with gratitude. You will see how every lonely step was shaping endurance. You will recognize how every unanswered prayer was drawing you deeper. You will understand that your wilderness was not wasted. It was sacred, chosen one. Let your wilderness strengthen you. Let it teach you to stand when comfort is stripped away. Let it remind you that promise is real. But preparation is necessary. The desert is not the end. It is the place where warriors are born. And when the time comes to step out, you will no longer walk as one uncertain or fragile. You will emerge as one refined, steady, and unshakable. The wilderness that once felt endless will become the testimony that proves you were trained by God Himself for victories yet to come. There are signs scattered along your path, little confirmations that remind you heaven has been speaking all along. Some call them coincidences, but the chosen know better. Prophetic numbers, divine timings, unexpected encounters, all are threads in the tapestry of your journey. They whisper, you are not forgotten. You are exactly where you need to be. 1. Perhaps you have noticed numbers appearing again and again in your life. Not random, but repeating, consistent, tugging at your attention. It might be on a clock when you glance without planning. It might be on a receipt, a license plate, a page number in a book. These are not accidents. They are heaven's way of reminding you. I am near. I am guiding. Oh, think of Jacob in the wilderness, dreaming of a ladder reaching into heaven. That vision was more than an image. It was confirmation that God was present in a place Jacob thought was empty. Numbers and signs work the same way. They become markers of presence, signals that you are walking a divinely orchestrated path. I once knew a woman who struggled to believe her prayers were heard. She often asked God for a tangible sign. Over and over, she began seeing the same sequence of numbers in unexpected places. At first, she dismissed it, but when she paused and prayed, she realized those numbers corresponded to a verse she had read years earlier. The verse carried a promise she desperately needed in that season. What seemed ordinary became extraordinary. The writings of Proverbs chapter 16, verse in remind us, in their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. Prophetic numbers and confirmations are heaven's way of establishing your steps. They're not magic, not superstition, but reminders. They anchor your faith when doubt creeps in. They whisper, you are not walking alone. Every action is planned. First, picture yourself strolling through a thick jungle. The way seems to be uncertain. The trees are tall, and there are shadows everywhere. Then all of a sudden, you see that the trees have etched symbols. There are marks left to help you go ahead. Knowing that you're not lost gives you a sense of relief. These are the numbers that foretell the future. Reminders carved into the surface that the path has been blazed out for you. Some people won't comprehend. They'll write it off as imagination or chance. However, those who are selected understand that God often communicates in whispers, rhythms, and patterns. Some people ignore sensitive people. Each number becomes a reminder. I'm being guided by the Lord. I'm inviting you to act with trust right now. Write the prophetic number 333 in the comments section. Why? Because it represents the presence of God's Trinity walking beside you and the wholeness of God. Saying, I trust the steps ordered for me, is what you mean when you announce 333. I think that His presence and grace are all around me on this trip. Superstition is not what this is. It is a proclamation. It's you synchronizing your speech with the beat of heaven. This gesture serves as a memorial, much as when Israel erected stones of memory along the Jordan to attest to God's faithfulness. It speaks to your soul. God is still with me. I move with His elegance. I allowed this reality to set in. You're not lost. No, you're not aimlessly aimless. You may be sure that the road is plain to Him, even if it is unclear to you, because the indicators along your way are heaven's fingerprints. Keep walking with your eyes open, chosen one. Take note of the hints, the trends, the affirmations. Heaven is communicating to you at every turn. I own you. You are led. You have been selected. The power itself is not the number. It serves as a reminder. Heaven was free to use any strategy. But statistics are easy to understand and difficult to ignore. They interrupt your everyday schedule and appear when you least expect them to. Must notice them in order to awaken your consciousness. Instead of clinging to superstition, you are becoming more aware of God's small fingerprints on your path. Imagine a tourist tracing the constellations in the night sky. Every constellation is a signal that helps him find his way. Without the stars, he would be overtaken by the darkness. But he finds the courage to go on with them. Similarly, your stars are prophetic numbers. They complement the word, but they can't take its place. They remind you of the one who can rescue you, but they can't save you themselves. Therefore, pay attention to the signals. When patterns repeatedly capture your attention, don't ignore them. Take a moment to think, pray, and let the Spirit validate what heaven is saying. You're teaching your heart to remain sensitive when you pay attention to these heavenly cues. Furthermore, a sensitive heart will never stray too far from the voice of God. You have seen some adversaries and you haven't seen others. Some have silently hoped for your downfall while grinning in your face. Others have dressed as pals, yet their hearts were armed with daggers. Even so, some people have resisted you without their will. However, the reality is sobering because they have been exploited as tools by the spirit of evil that fears your calling. The resistance increases with the size of your task. Think again about Joseph. He was the target of a plot by his own brothers. He was thrown into a pit, lied about his destiny, and sold him into slavery. But each betrayal brought him one step closer to the throne that God had set up. The absence of God's hand is not shown by betrayal. It demonstrates how solid his strategy is. Joseph would never have made it to Egypt if he hadn't been deceived. He would not have rescued countries if he had never made it to Egypt. I recall a young lady who dedicated her life to gaining the trust of those around her. She thought loyalty could not be broken. However, though she had previously relied on stopped supporting her and even turned against her as her promotion season approached, the ache almost broke her at first. But as time went on, she came to see that their treachery was a revelation rather than a loss. Those who departed revealed what was unable to accompany her into the future. Although it seemed painful, the trimmings served as protection. Psalms chapter 27, verse 2, reminds us that it is my opponents and foes who will falter and fall when the wicked try to consume me. It's not only poetry, either. It's a promise. The adversaries that oppose you are short-lived. They may hiss. They'll stumble, but they'll strike. Their own plans end up becoming traps for them. Imagine it like a sunset's shadows. They seem big, menacing, and almost overpowering. However, they're only the lack of light. The shadows disappear as soon as the sun rises completely. Similar to this, your adversaries may seem powerful at the time, but they are revealed and defeated as God's light shines on your path. It is difficult to put up with treachery. The blade of a friend pierces deeper than the blade of a stranger. Even these scars, nevertheless, have the potential to become knowledge. You learn discernment from them. They help you see better. They teach you to rely less on the erratic allegiances of mankind and more on God. Pain turns to become a teacher, demonstrating to you that not every hand should have access to your heart and not every voice should direct you. King David was fully aware of this suffering. Saul pursued him. Absalom, his own son, betrayed him, and his adversaries, who had formerly praised him, ridiculed him. Nevertheless, David discovered that God, not people, was his stronghold through it all. He was left clutching alone to God's shelter after the betrayals deprived him of any fictitious safety nets. It is through desertion, not praise, that real strength is developed. Picture yourself strolling in a garden. While some plants are parasites that rob the earth of its vitality, others grow robust and healthy. They suffocate the roots of what ought to thrive if the gardener does not remove them. Even if it hurts, betrayal is often the gardener's hand. It makes room for what is true to take root by removing things that couldn't grow with you. Additionally, there is antagonism that is sensed spiritually but not visible to the naked sight. There were nights when you felt heavy without knowing why. There were days when even the slightest progress appeared to be met with opposition. These invisible adversaries attest to the spiritual significance of your existence. Darkness does not fight for what it does not fear. Your importance is shown by the ferocity of your conflicts. Hidden adversaries should not deter you, chosen one. Don't get resentful of treachery. These are not curses, they are affirmations. They demonstrate the significance of your vocation and the breadth of your task. And even if they cause great wounds, they are unable to undo what heaven has decided. You will realize one day that the people who deceived you simply helped you find your mission. Those who resisted you simply made you more resilient. The injuries they caused will turn into the scars that bear witness to your survival. And all of your enemies, both visible and invisible, will realize they never had the last say when your crown is put on your head. And you will rise at that time with serenity rather than resentment. Because you'll see that even your adversaries were tools in a bigger scheme. What was intended to do damage ended up becoming the same instrument that heaven used to raise you. Every fighter has to understand how to fight using heaven's tactics in addition to how to survive conflicts. You were never intended to aimlessly strike at shadows while stumbling through strife. You have been given heavenly weapons by God, tactics designed for the invisible entities that oppose your destiny rather than for people. In chapter 10, verse 4 of his second epistle to the Corinthians, the Apostle Paul writes, "The weapons we use to combat are not the world's weapons. Instead, they possess the divine ability to destroy fortresses." You fight against people, Spiritual powers are at work underlying every betrayal, false allegation, and opposition, despite the fact that individuals may seem to be the impediment. And you are not left helpless in paradise. You are equipped with the sword of the Spirit, the shield of faith, the word, prayer, and authority. These concepts are not poetic. They are more powerful and incisive than any weapon in the world. They are living realities. Prior to Jericho, consider Joshua. The walls of the walled city were impenetrable to the naked eye. However, God's plan did not include battering rams or siege weaponry. When the time arrived, they blew trumpets, shouted, and marched silently out of obedience. Walls fell down because of things that mankind thought were stupid. Similarly, you will succeed when you submit to divine strategy rather than relying just on human might or reason. There was a lady I know who prayed consistently for her family. Years went by with no change, but she became tired and wanted to quit. She was then reminded by the Spirit that prayer was not a waste of words. It was combat. She changed the way she prayed, reading passages out loud and making pledges rather than begging in desperation. Chains started to break slowly. Hearts became softer. Things changed. She discovered what many others do not. Prayer is not a passive activity. It serves as the battlefield. Imagine that you are an archer. Your darts disperse pointlessly if you are not aiming. However, with practice, every arrow hits its target. The goal is spiritual tactics.